So Julie Scott asks, will there be audio? I don't know, Julie, can you hear me? Oh, I've got to mark that as mute in order to be able to see that.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, otherwise there'll be lots of echoey audio. All right. So yeah, Julie can hear it. So now you're going to watch, like before, you're going to watch the chatty chat, right?
I'm going to do my best to participate in 2 conversations at the same time.
Okay. All right. And then I'm going to try and process the list of notes that we have for this podcast / live YouTube thing. So what we do is we take the audio from this and put it into our podcast chunk. So I'll do my best to be the person going through the notes and reading the actual chapter, unless you're feeling like you want it's your turn to read. I don't know.
I don't know, Paul. You're so good at it. I enjoy reading, but
okay,
you're
right.
especially good at it. If you want to hand it off, I'm totally down to do it. But I think people enjoy listening to your voice. I think some people enjoy listening to your voice.
You know, it's funny. I before I ever started recording podcasts, there were a bunch of people that wanted me to just simply turn on a microphone while I'm out in the garden or something, and they heard my voices from some of my YouTube videos. They said, "Oh no, I could listen to that all day," and it's like, really? Okay. And then after we started doing it, we started getting this feedback from people that were like, that my voice sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard, and so I kind of felt like, if my voice sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard to you, I got a great solution. Stop listening. Just hit the off button. I mean, just be done. And then apparently there's still people that think it sounds great. So it's kind of like, leave it for those people. Then the people are like, oh, it's so rambly. I can't stand to listen to it. Great, just turn it off. Man, there's so many podcasts out there. Why do you got to listen to this one? Now, I do feel like the content that I share in my podcast is for an extremely small group. So like maybe only 2% of the people that love permaculture would be into my podcast. And so I kind of think it's for like 12 people. Maybe it's gotten to be more than 12. I know that a lot of people download it, but I think that a lot of people have it on auto download or something. And I don't know. And plus I don't know how many people are like, oh, I just love to hate this guy. It's like, surely you got to have something better to do your time than that. All right. I can see lots of comments. Look at that. Here come the notes. All right, I'm going to get started here. We did a podcast, live recording YouTube-y thing like 2 days ago. It was 2 days ago, wasn't it? Tuesday? Yeah. And there was a note from there where it's like, oh, I should have said that during the podcast. And so the note is, I think we do a good job of pointing out that a vegan diet can be good for the environment, but it is far from best. And it's definitely not the best thing that you can do for the environment, let alone the best diet for the environment. Although after publishing that, we have gotten, like, not only did somebody in the chat kind of really go, like, they were not only certain that a vegan diet was best for them, but they were very adamant that all other people absolutely must do a vegan diet. It's like, no, we're not doing that. So I think that in that chapter, we did a very good job of proving, and I'm going to use the word proving loosely, that a garden-based diet, something where you're growing your own food, is vastly superior than anything that involves purchasing. And growing your own food is far better than the vegan diet from a grocery store or restaurants. Yeah, okay. So that's our last note from the last podcast. We didn't say that exactly. Okay. And I see Uncle Mud is here. Oh, my. We have a celebrity.
Yeah, he's asking for updates already. I just told him that's coming after we read the chapter. So. Yeah,
so Uncle Mud, Chris McClellan, he was here last fall as we overhauled Allerton Abbey. And it's kind of like, okay, we got to get in and we got to seal this thing. So we're going to peel back the roof and seal it properly from above. Then we started to dig, and it's kind of like, man, this is a lot of work. I think the people came down off the hill and they said, we've already dug down 2 feet and we haven't found it. It's like, really? It should only, like at that point, it should only be about 8 inches thick. And no, we're still digging 2 feet and still going. And so we ended up peeling back all of the dirt off the top. And there was one part where it's like right in this general area where it was 9 feet thick. And it's like, at no point should it ever be thicker than 3 feet thick. And that's with both layers.
Yeah, 9 feet that's a ridiculous amount of dirt.
That is an insane amount. And we're going to talk about that later. So right now, of course, we've got the Kickstarter going on for the Building a Better World in Your Backyard book. And chapter 30 of the book is all about Wofati and natural building. And we're going to read the whole chapter in this podcast. That's our primary mission with this podcast. And when we're done, then we're going to talk about lessons learned. So we're going to get into the specifics of Wofati stuff. But as we read the chapter, we're going to stop every paragraph or two. We can talk about the stuff that we just talked about. And people can post questions and things of that nature. So, and of course, it's good that Uncle Mud is here. He has a lot of experience with building, not only working with this Wofati, but gobs of natural building things.
Yeah.
And he was one of the people who read a draft copy. So we sent the book out for each chapter where we dive into a particular topic. We tried to get it out to at least 2 experts in the field for just that chapter. And so Uncle Mud is one of the natural building experts. And so he'll be teaching our appropriate technology course here coming up soon. And we're going to have a lot of the PEP 1 stuff. A lot of the PEP stuff is going to be worked into our ATC this year. But of course, I think a big part of our ATC is like, innovation. Like, let's do some stuff that's new and different. All right, I'm going off into too many tangents all at once. Let's get a focus here on what we're going to talk about this time. For people that are listening to the podcast or whatever, or I guess watching this later, I think if you're watching this on YouTube, I think I've provided a link already in the description, and you can click on that. But I'm going to think there's a lot more people that are going to listen to this on the podcast. And if you want to be able to go to the Kickstarter, I found out that if you just go to Kickstarter and you search for my name, Paul Wheaton, that it comes up. We also set up Permies.com/T/BWB for Better World Book. Yeah. And so that's got the links to the Kickstarter there too. But when you're listening to a Kickstarter, you don't exactly have a link. It's just, it is what it is. We are now into a phase where we are almost to our first stretch goal. I think we're just a couple $100 away from our very first stretch goal. And that's something that applies to all of the levels that get one of the books. So $10 and up. And that's where Tracy is going to add 100 doodles throughout the book. And so either in the margins, between sections or wherever, all kinds of little places, little tiny doodles throughout the book, making it a little bit more fun, I think, a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
General. So I kind of wanted to do this before we wrote the book, before we started the Kickstarter, but it's kind of like at that time we didn't know if we were even going to get funded for what we had, and so I wanted it to be the first stretch goal, and so here in a few hours we'll probably be there. Yeah, and so I got to say, we picked this stretch goal of $50,000. We picked this one because it seemed like there was a bit of an if on whether or not we would reach it or not. Right. And so we kind of thought, if everything goes as it's going, we don't do anything else, we probably won't hit 50,000. So the fact that we're hitting it shows that we've been working hard and we're reaching more people and infecting more brains and doing the things that you got to do for a Kickstarter. And yay, it's paying off. And so we're hitting 50,000. How exciting! 50,000.
So we are officially just under $700 away from reaching our first stretch goal.
And then the next stretch goal at 55,000. Now we had a lot of discussion about, do we do a stretch goal every 10,000 or every 5,000. And I just feel like it's more fun to do it every 5,000. And so I'm glad that we went down this path. It just feels more enjoyable. But we're going to give away everybody who supports the Kickstarter at $100 or higher is going to receive Raven Ranson's book, Clean with Cleaners You Can Eat. And so I worked with her a little bit on this book, and I did write the foreword on the book. And I got to say, for those people who have already read it, I gotta say, like, I just had I just enjoyed it so much, where she talks about her favorite recipe for a general cleaner. You read it? Oh yeah, it's like, and so I'm not sure if I should share it or not, because it's like giving away the punchline, but it's like, I just think that first of all, people use cleaners like, I don't know, 40 times more than they need to. Yeah. And then on top of that, they use some sort of toxic gick that leaves a residue behind instead of something that's edible. And there's so much stuff that is utterly edible that you can use for your cleaners. But I really love okay, I'm going to give it away. I'm just going to give it away.
Yeah, you can't not.
Okay, so here's the general cleaner, the cleaner, the all-purpose cleaner. So I kind of think of like all those ads I saw as a kid when watching television for Formula 409. And so this is what replaces Formula 409. The recipe is warm water and a rag. I just love that. So, all right. So everybody who supports, if we hit this stretch goal of $55,000, then everybody who supported the Kickstarter at $100 or higher is going to get a copy of the book. And let's see. And another thing is that this is Raven's second book. Her first book she did a Kickstarter for, huge success. And apparently it is selling like hotcakes long after the Kickstarter is over. Homegrown linen, transforming flaxseed into fiber. And she's selling gobs of copies of that, and it's doing really, really well. And so this Clean with Cleaners You Can Eat is her second book. And this is all apparently in response to the stuff that I've written about passive income streams. And so now she doesn't, like with her Homegrown Linen book, she doesn't need to do anything with it, and money keeps coming in. And I suppose now it's going to be the same for the Clean with Cleaners You Can Eat. So I see somebody loves her book. I don't know.
It's sitting on my shelf right back there. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Uncle Mud says the book is great. And he's
talking about our book.
And okay. Right. And he's provided a link to the ATC. And then somebody mentions vinegar, and then water. Yes, water. Here's fresh vinegar or a rock. So like you would clean with a rock. I'm not sure what that means. Okay. The next stretch goal is going to be, and so I'm hoping that we're going to hit 55,000. If we can if Sean and I can keep working hard, I hope that we can do that. And of course, people that have been, we've seen a lot of people in the last couple of days raising their pledges. And so that's been really making a difference too. At $60,000, we'll have a stretch goal it's where Sean and I will scribble in a copy of your book. So now, before the Kickstarter started, I was on a staff meeting with the Permies.com staff, and like 5 different people were telling me how important it is to offer signed copies of the book. And I kind of thought, why would anybody want anybody to scribble in their book? It's their book. Don't they want a pristine, it's just a book. So apparently, and then after half an hour of hearing about this, it's apparently it's critically important that authors do this. And I'm new at being an author, so I have never sought out signatures for a book. I don't know, unless it's like, I think Ianto Evans wrote in one of mine, Dinah Leaf Christian wrote in my copy of her book. I kind of cherish that. I kind of like that. But I know them. They're my friends. And I'm glad that they wrote me a little note to prove that they're my friend. So I got evidence. They like me. Yeah. So that's cool. But anyway, the other thing is that Sean's in Canada and I'm in the United States. So it was kind of like, how are we going to both sign a book? I mean, do we have to ship it twice? So what we've done is we've said, so if we reach this stretch goal of $60,000, Sean is going to drive to my house, and then we're going to sign the copies that need signing. And I think that in the survey that goes out for the people at the $100 and up level, it'll say, like, what do you want us to mention in your signature? And, kind of a thing. We could do that. I don't know. I'm new to this. I'm making it up. So we'll get together, we'll sign, and then a bunch of people have already offered to come and help us stuff books into boxes and stuff.
Oh, sweet.
And so we'll have this little party. And so book signing and box stuffing party at my house. And what we'll do is the same thing we did with the last Kickstarter, where we will say, okay, everybody who wants to come, send an email to this special email address. And then the top 20 contributors for that will get an invite to come out here to my place for this party.
I'm pretty excited. Yeah.
And I don't know. I imagine you'll probably hang out for a few days. I mean, you've come all this way from Canada.
Yeah,
we'll give you the red cabin. We'll give you the red cabin.
Cool.
And so it'll be nice. $65,000. Everybody that supports the Kickstarter at $100 and up will get a copy of the World Domination Gardening 3 DVD set as a gift code. So if you already have the World Domination Gardening 3 DVD set, and I hope that you do, then you'll get a gift code so you can give a copy to somebody else. If you don't have it, well then you'll get to hear me say fuck a lot while talking about ponds and hugelkultur. And so that was a crazy story. I was asked to come and teach a workshop. I went and taught it for free. I didn't charge them anything. And when I showed up, there were these two guys with cameras. And they said they were going to do a Kickstarter. And I said, good luck. I hope you get rich. And so I didn't ask for any money. And then like months later, somehow it's in my hands. I have there. And so Diego, who set up the event, said, can you make this into a DVD or something? Okay. So we had a Kickstarter for that, and we did that. But everybody will get a copy of the 3 DVD set if we hit that stretch goal. And then at $70,000, if we hit the stretch goal of $70,000, which just seems like forever away right now, everybody at $100 and up will get a copy of Michael Judd's book, Edible Landscaping with a Permaculture Twist. And I think that book's doing really well on Amazon. It seems like if I search for permaculture on Amazon, I see it there.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good. And I recall I haven't had a chance to read through it, but it's sitting on my reading list. I paged through it though. He's got a lot of really cool pictures in there. I think that's one of the.
Yeah, it's a real photo heavy book. It's awesome being me because I get free copies of stuff, and I think he sent this. I'm trying to see if I can see it. Here, oh, there it is. Hang on. So it's this book. It's a fancy book.
The pod people can't see that, but.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I'm trying to show all of the lovely pictures real quick to people. Oh, and he also included this lovely card. I'll put it back in here. All right, but everybody's going to get a copy of that. And it's a great book. Okay. Now, we're between 70,000 and 100,000. We're still sorting some stuff out, and there's new information about that. But at 100,000, we're going to do the audiobook. And so if we get to $100,000, which my all-time best Kickstarter, my all-time most money Kickstarter was $105,000 for Better Wood Heat, DIY rocket mass heaters. That second 4 DVD set about rocket mass heaters. So if we hit 100,000 for this one, which it does seem like this Kickstarter is bringing in more money than any other Kickstarter I've ever done so far, then we're going to make the audiobook. And as part of that, we'll make a new reward level at $40, so people could get just the audiobook. But everybody at $100 and up will also get a copy of the audiobook. Yeah. And in case people haven't detected a pattern yet, let me make it clear. Yeah, we're trying to really heavily favor people who support the Kickstarter at $100 or more. Mostly because, I think if somebody supports the Kickstarter at $10, they get a ton of stuff, including 2 copies of the ebook. And so that's one for yourself and one to give away. At $100, that would be 36 ebooks or 12 physical copies or mix and match. But the important thing is that that's a person that's going to really give away the books. And that's kind of like really aligned with the whole project here. And so I'm really excited for those. Plus, there's also this whole thing, like right now, if half the people with pledges under $100 upgraded to $100, we would have blown all these stretch goals out of the water.
Yeah, somebody named Lou E in the chat here is saying if it gets to 1,500 backers, which we're just about 40-ish away from, and every person adds $34, we'd be at 100,000. Not saying everyone will, but it's kind of crazy just to do the math and see that kind of thing.
So I'm hoping to encourage the current kickbacks or the Kickstarter supporters to bump up pledges to $100, and I'm hoping to use the stretch goals to encourage that.
Yeah.
So, and I think we're going to make that pot so insanely sweet as much as we can through. Yep. So, and we've got a bunch of other stuff coming up, but that's the other thing too. Big news. Since the last podcast we put out, is David Pagan Butler sent me an email saying, throw my book in as a stretch goal. And so his book is called Organic Pools DIY Manual. So, and he's got the DVD out too, that is the natural swimming pools. And we've got I think it's a 2 or 3 podcast review of his DVD from a few years back. Amazing DVD, amazing book. It's all good. But everybody at $100 will get a copy of that book if we hit that stretch goal. And we haven't figured out what the stretch goal thing, like what number it's going to be at. We'll have to, if I kind of have put off any more stretch goal figuring out until we've at least knocked off 1 or 2 of the current stretch goals.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's like instead of talking about that kind of thing, we should be focusing on like how to infect more brains with our Kickstarter and get more support. Work hard on that. Okay. So let's see. We have yet to sort out the 5 stretch goals between 75,000 and 95,000. Feels a little arrogant, as if I'm worried about arrogance. But it does. It feels a little arrogant to think we might have any chance of even getting that far. At the same time, lots of fun conversations are happening. One of the things that we did is we had a day where we stopped working. We made sure to not do anything interesting to kind of see what happened with the Kickstarter, and it did pretty much die. It pretty much stopped. Like money stopped coming into the Kickstarter. So, kind of as evidence, you gotta keep doing things every day to keep it going, and in order so that we can get to all these awesome stretch goals. All right. And Eric Wisner has some new rocket mass heater plans. Apparently bigger and more detailed and much more information packed than any of her previous plans. So I looked through them, and they were really, really huge and very detailed. So this is a massive set of plans. And she has offered those for stretch goal fodder. And so I'm saying, like, hey, can we get those onto the digital market? We'll make links, and we'll get this all on rails and things like that. And so that'll be another stretch goal that we hope to offer really soon. Another stretch goal that's being hammered out as over the last couple of days is the idea of we'll put 200 copies of the book into libraries. And so we've been talking to a guy named Daniel Ray. He is a Montana librarian, and he got us started on the idea. And so if we hit this stretch goal, then we would send 50 copies to Daniel, and he'll distribute them throughout apparently all of the libraries in Montana.
Some of them.
Okay.
A certain network of libraries, but
right, they'll be available because you could do interlibrary loan. Like, you might have a teeny tiny branch that won't have that copy on the shelf all the time, but then you can say, I want that, and you can get that. But anyway, we're setting up how we're going to work that and get 200 copies of the book out there and into libraries in that fashion. And then
Daniel's been super helpful. Just want to publicly thank him for answering my many questions and being patient, as I sometimes take months to respond to emails. Thanks, buddy.
Oh, so you're saying you do respond to all your emails?
No.
I have to let 20 a day go.
But he's one of the ones I want to respond to. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. Davin Hoyt has been cranking out plans for all sorts of things. For last year's Kickstarter, his plans for the giant solar food dehydrator were a big hit. And at least a dozen people said that they raised their pledge level just to get those plans. And this year, when he contacted me, I thought he was going to offer his rocket oven plans or his Rollie shelves plans, his J-tube rocket plans. But since we have this new gift code stuff, he offered everybody at $100 or higher 4 gift codes for the giant solar food dehydrator. So if you already have those from like the last Kickstarter, or you bought those plans, that's cool, but you'll get 4 more that you can give away. And it seems like people love these plans. So that's coming up as a stretch goal. Okay, there you go. That's the stretch goal report. Kind of thought it'd be fun to slide it into the beginning of this podcast. Sean, I can see tons of stuff just buzzing by on the chat thing there.
Yep.
And look, there's something from Jocelyn. Oh, posted. How to change your reward level is here. Thanks to Sean. Oh, okay, cool.
I don't know what this is. Now I want to open the thing.
You don't remember writing that?
No.
All right.
Oh, Jocelyn wrote something.
Oh, it says thanks to Sean, and you being Sean, I thought that it was to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, Jocelyn's been really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. In fact, if Jocelyn's here, I can add Jocelyn. She's now a moderator. There we go. I don't know what she'll do with that. Feel the power.
Jocelyn says that I came up with it. Anyways, let's move on.
Okay. Got to thank my Patreon peeps. I've got 2 Patreon pages, one for podcasts called patreon.com/Paul Wheaton, and the other one for the YouTube videos, patreon.com/PWVids. For each of those, we shared our secret recording time, venue, and topic way ahead of time. And Jocelyn got some of the Patreon wonkiness sorted out, and we now have a few names to read off. So for the pod supporters, we've got Dr. Hugh Gill Culture. I think that will never get old. And then we've got Suleiman, Kerry, and Sasquatch. That's all in one. And Ivan. I'm going to try and read Ivan's last name, Borkovog. He is the Navigator. And then at the video ones, it's Kerry Rodgers, Kyle Neath, and Mehron Kugler. Thank you to my Patreon peeps. What? Did I read something wrong? Did I screw it up?
No, it's just funny hearing how different people pronounce different names. Go ahead.
I am trying. I'm making it up. So thanks to my Patreon peeps for making so much stuff possible and all work out. This is amazing. All right, it is time. Do we have any questions so far, or anything we should reply to?
There were some questions about Wofati stuff, but let's save that for after we've read the Wofati stuff, and then we can go into some questions.
Okay. Any other fun comments about all the things we just read?
We've got people from all over the place. Western North Carolina, Sterling, Alaska. I saw someone from the Yukon.
Awesome.
Just saying that's pretty cool.
I bet whoever's in the Yukon, they really love rocket mass heaters. and Wofatis. Okay. Here we go. Chapter 30, a building design that solves almost everything. Oh, there's Western Oregon. I used to live in Western Oregon, and I used to live in Eastern Oregon. I've lived in many parts of Oregon, but never Central Oregon. Never. It's a desert. Okay. This chapter is not for the faint of heart. This is what I recommend for what I believe to be the ultimate permaculture scenario. I imagine that no one below level 4 would ever consider actually doing this. And yet I think some people below level 4 will read this chapter anyways, just to come along for the ride. If you're looking at a building design, you're likely going to be looking for land on which to build it. So before we move on to building design, I wish to take this opportunity to state that, in my opinion, a sloped woodland in a colder climate is far superior to all other options. Soil generally builds fastest in a cold climate, and if you live in some place where it's flat, can't control the movement of frost and water on your land. And if you live where there's too little rainfall, you can make it work, but it's going to be far slower, and you won't already have trees to work with. As a bit of bonus luck, the flat land I don't want tends to appeal to conventional farmers, which means the ultimate permaculture land seems like the cheapest land around. At this moment, I want to talk about tropical locations. And so I saw a presentation years ago where a guy was showing his slides from Bali. And like, oh, look how beautiful. I think it was Bali. Anyway, it was a tropical place. And it's kind of like, look how beautiful it is. And oh, you could just walk outside and pick this food here and pick this food here. So, of course, keep in mind that here in Montana, you could do that too. Tends to be apples, you know, and here's an apricot. But okay, setting that aside, he was talking about how all year you could go out and harvest stuff. And so, I think I'm worried. I found a tick on me the other day, so I'm kind of like here checking for like, oh, that was a little something. What was that? Was it a tick? It wasn't. So, and the tick wasn't lashed. It was starving to death on my bald head. Like how do I get this to work? It's all bald up here. So, but the tick had not latched, so I got him early enough. Anyway, the presentation was happening in Montana, and this guy happened to live in Montana at the time, and he's showing all these beautiful pictures. And then somebody said, well, why do you live in Montana? Why don't you live there? And he says, it's because every night what you do is you strip off all your clothes and you're naked, and you hold out your arms like this, and you slowly rotate while your friends pick off all the parasites.
No, yeah, I think you were talking about this in the podcast with Zach Weiss.
Oh, okay, good. I think it's worth saying it again. The important thing is that, man, a cold climate sure is great. Montana is the best. The best. Now, as it turns out, in Montana, we do have the ticks, which are parasites. However, we have hardly any at all. Rarely. I mean, like, I found one on me this year. I bet all of last year I may have found two on me. And I have never, in the whole time I've lived here, ever had a tick latch onto me. Well, for my entire life, I've never had a tick latch onto me. And so I think the ticks are about the worst of it. And they're only for a couple of months in the spring. And it's rare to even find one on you. So it's a pretty smooth ride here in Montana. But that's a powerful driving force. Somebody's writing that their ticks are the size of bears. That's got to be hard to walk.
I think he's I think he's the one in the Yukon. Thought I might come visit someday, but maybe not.
Change my mind. Okay. Moving along. There are many different schools of thought in the world of sustainable building. Unfortunately, in most cases, the environmental footprint is still really big, even for platinum LEED. That said, there have been some designs that have come out that are pretty good, but although there are people who would argue otherwise, I'm going to suggest that no single design is suitable for every location. And it turns out that for sloped woodland and a colder climate, these designs all fall short for some reason or other. All right, so we mentioned LEED. I'm, and it's got a footnote that goes with it to help describe more about what LEED is. But I've been in some platinum LEED buildings, and it's like, what a lot of cement.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of manufactured stuff, but it's kind of like, I guess, they're trying to meet code. And for a lot of places, it's like, you are hereby required by code to use cement. And I really like to get away from cement for a bunch of different reasons. And one of the things we do in PEP is to say, okay, you're going to make your own cement. You only have to make this much, this tiny little amount, but it will give you an idea of why you don't want to use cement. And it's like, I think when you get done making it, you're going to realize a few important things. One of which is like, wow, that took a long time. Wow, that took a lot of energy to make the cement. But more importantly is the bit of information about how a lot of our industrial waste is being snuck into cement. So that way they reduce the expense of properly dumping their industrial waste. So there's a lot of cement that is now quite toxic that doesn't need to be. And so the same cement from 50 years ago didn't have a bunch of toxic gick hidden inside of it.
Mm.
So another reason to dodge cement. Not to mention it has a massive carbon footprint.
Yeah.
After years of researching natural building techniques, I came up with a design for sloped woodland that creates a beautiful living space with an extremely low footprint. Imagine living in something that, from the inside, looks like a log cabin with more light. It doesn't need heat or air conditioning, is 3 times faster to build, and has about 1/5 of the materials cost. I call it Wofati. And I think that this building design is so good that some people might just move to a sloped woodland in order to embrace it. The intricate details of this design can easily fill a book. We are currently wrapping up some builds and some experiments, and it's now safe to share a few of the details here. All right. The section title now is Setting Our Design Criteria Extremely High. Is there anything that's coming up in the chat stuff that we should address at this point?
Not yet.
Okay. The following are the main criteria I looked for in a natural building design. More than half of the materials come from the property. 1/100th the toxicity of a conventional home. A structure that will last at least 50 years. Heating efficiency better than passive solar. Easy for a first-time builder to build. Materials plus labor equals less than a conventional home. A beautiful, luxuriant space to live in. Before we get into the Wofati, let's take a look at some other popular building styles and see how they match up against some of these criteria.
Do you want to expand a little bit on why we said a structure that will last at least 50 years as opposed to picking a higher number?
I think, why don't you tell me what you have in mind? There's a point you're trying to get to here.
I think a part of it is like you can make, or you can attempt to make something that's going to last forever. And
Yes.
that's cool if you can. But there's a lot of things that depending on your situation, it takes a lot of inputs to make something that lasts forever and a lot less inputs to make something that lasts not quite as long, but still lasts a long time. And then there's also the thing where our building styles have not really innovated very much at all over the last 100 years. Some people would say they have. I think we haven't really innovated at all. It's all kind of the same. You got stick walls and you put stuff in it and then seal it up tight. And if we were to try and set up a situation where we're actually trying to innovate, that requires iteration and trying different things.
Uh-oh. Did your internet just go down?
No, I'm still here. Uh-oh. I'm still here.
All right. I think
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. Where did I leave off?
I was grooving on the part where you're talking about how it's possible to build something that could last like 500 years.
Right. Yeah, I think that'd be really cool, but I think it's also the kind of thing where we might build something and think, oh, this will last a long time, and that's cool. But as we're innovating, we're going to come up with new designs. And so if we build housing for 400 million people in North America and make it all sustainable, all lasting 500 years now, but then we find out later that, I don't know, maybe the energy inputs are ridiculous, or maybe somebody foolishly included something toxic, which obviously we advocate against that. But, I think that's one of the problems sometimes is there's so much stuff that we're stuck with because we made it super, super long lasting in a bad way.
Okay. I think that's an interesting approach. I do think that there are designs that last hundreds of years. I think that there's going to be a lot of temples and other structures around the world that are like 500 to 1,000 years old. I think that there are a lot of that stuff could be applied. I mean, part of the challenge is going to be something that will do well in winter, with frost heaves and the like. And so I do kind of think that there's going to be improvements, but it's kind of like we need to. The other thing is that for those structures, though, a lot of times it's like the construction time is going to be 3 or 4 times longer.
Yeah. And
so I think that those are fun to explore later, but I kind of feel like I still want to get done doing the annualized thermal inertia tests on Allerton Abbey. And
well, and shooting for something a lot of 50 years, I think sometimes when I look at natural building stuff, people are like, oh, here's this new awesome thing. And I look and it's like, is that going to break down in 5 years? Like, is that going to make it? So I think 50 years is a good benchmark in both ways.
I want to read something that's in one of the comments. So Uncle Mud says, the Wofati just made it into Rodney Morgan's master's thesis on the limitations of leads and passive house. He's my friend who fiddled with your electric tractor last night. Yeah, I remember Rodney. By the way, the electric tractor only worked for about a minute after Rodney left. And it's currently parked as we work on other projects. So, all right, are you ready to move along? Or should we
let's move along.
Okay. This is a subsection. We can do better than straw bale designs. A straw bale home is often essentially the same as a conventional home, except the exterior walls are replaced by straw bales covered in plaster. So, Mud, if you feel that any of this is a point to make exception to, not only did you have that opportunity months ago to send us comments like that, and you did, but now's a good time to speak up and let's get into it. But hey, let me say that again: a straw bale home is often essentially the same as a conventional home, except the exterior walls are replaced by straw bales covered in plaster. Some builders report that it's a bit like building the exterior walls twice, once with wood to hold up the roof, and a second time to add the straw bales.
Obviously, that'd be for the post and beam style, not the load-bearing ones.
Right, but see, hardly anybody builds the load-bearing style.
Yeah.
And so...
for reasons.
Yeah, so the beauty of straw bale is the insulation. Straw itself is not a particularly good insulator, but a really thick wall of it is. So straw bale homes usually end up much more insulated than conventional homes. This reduces the need to heat the home during the winter. Of course, to stay warm on a really cold day, it helps if you're sealed up inside like being in a Ziploc bag. When paying for the labor, straw bale homes are typically 30% more expensive than conventional homes. Some people host a workshop on their build site to mitigate this expense. The upside is that you're sequestering carbon. The downside is that this building style relies somewhat heavily on the existence of annual grain monocrops, something I'd like to move away from. And unless you live on land that produces straw, you'll have to buy straw and have it moved to you. For people who live in the mountains, that's a long distance for the straw to travel. I wish for something more local. Okay, so there you go. I think in Montana, straw bale is the sweetheart of almost everybody who's in a natural building. And so I think by writing this book, in so many ways, I'm going to harvest so much hate from so many different people and each person's going to have their own reason. And so everybody who loves straw bale, I've now given them the ticket that they need to thoroughly and properly hate me.
Right. Well, and of course, so you live in the mountains and I live in the middle of the prairies. And so for me, finding straw is like, oh, yeah, just, look out your window. Somebody's got straw bales close by. Of course, finding the right ones, challenging. But yeah, it's a bit different, I think. But.
So, if you're living out in the prairie, in fact, if you're on 200 acres and it's like it's just one giant wheat field, then you go and you harvest the wheat, and then the next week you go and you bale all the straw and put it all up, and there you go. You're all set to ride.
Yeah, I think the biggest point though is the whole thing where it's like talking about, I don't want to have a giant field of wheat. That's not how I want us to grow our food. And so it's like, we're going to have some for a while, but if we do eventually transition to a world where we don't have giant fields of wheat.
The next thing is that nearly all of that straw, if you live out in the prairies and there's straw available to you, 98% of it is going to be loaded to the gills with persistent herbicides.
Yes.
And so it's like, what you're thinking like, well, now I've got a natural building and it's not like I'm an herb, so it's not going to kill me. And it's kind of like, well, it's not exactly really good for you either. And okay, well, it's going to be sealed up in cob, and it's kind of like, it's still. So it's like it probably won't be a problem, really. Probably won't. But at the same time, if you're trying to live in a natural building, don't you want it to be less toxic? So
yeah, it's going to be better than conventional, but not
true,
optimal.
true. So on the scale,
Yeah.
like if you're going to have a spectrum of conventional to better, then there's going to be like I think that the Wofati is going to rate better on this spectrum than your. Plus, the other thing is the straw bale house. It's still got the exact same foundation, cement, and the exact same roof. Lot of glue in that roof. So it's going to be like an improvement. Well, anyway, it's going to be the same roof and hat and boots is what they say when building natural buildings. You got to have a good hat and boots. But there are designs that are better. So like if you go to Cobbville, you're going to find that their foundation is going to be rocks and a cob floor, and their roof is wood, but it's still going to be an EPDM liner on the roof.
Yeah. So
EPDM is like rubber pond liner.
Mm-hmm.
So still, that's a lot of, and it's not really rubber; it's a petroleum rubbery thing. So when you unpackage it, the smell hits you. It's like, yeah, that's something made from petroleum, all right.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Let's keep going.
Okay. We can do better than cob designs. Like with straw bale, cob construction generally still has a conventional roof and foundation. Instead of straw covered in plaster, the walls are made of sand, clay, and a bit of some sort of fiber, often chopped straw. The material costs for a cob wall will be lower than for a conventional wall. That said, as much fun as it is to think about building a home from just dirt in your yard, for quality cob, you need a source of clay and good sand. Not just any sand will do. Sometimes you're on land that has clay. So then you just need a few dump truck loads of sand. If you're lucky, you'll have both. So at Cobbville, apparently they don't have sand. So they have these, so they do have clay, and so you take your wheelbarrow out, and it's like there's the clay, and you grab it, and you bring it over, and then they bring these big dump truckloads of sand in, and then you got to the cool thing that I really love about Cobbville is that it's like about 100 yards between the buildings and the parking lot, and so you have to walk a footpath, a small footpath, to get to the buildings. Clearly, everything in Cobbville is built without machinery of any kind. You can't get it there. There's no way to get it there, which I think is one of the most beautiful elements about Cobbville. This is all done by hand. Everything here.
And
but
my land, where I hope to build my homestead, is a ton of sand. It's like there's a little bit of topsoil, and then it's like 10 feet of sand straight down is what I've been told. So it's like gonna need some clay if you want to do cob.
Now the other thing is the sand a sharp sand?
Right. Yeah.
Or is it like a beach sand? And so then the beach sand, it's like you're trying to build out of ball bearings. It's all rounded sand.
Yeah.
Whereas sharp sand, it's like it feels sharp, but it's going to like when the clay is with the sand, it makes something structurally strong. It holds it all together. So let's see. Mud is saying things.
Good things.
Wofati has benefits even if it only lasts 10 years. It was cheap and very low impact, especially if the trees needed to be harvested due to insects or fire. Plus, it's a hugelkultur when you're done. Well, Allerton Abbey is currently 5 years old. And I think Allerton Abbey, and we're going to talk more about, exciting things with Allerton Abbey that we've discovered, and because it's
Yeah.
the first one we've ever built in a little bit, but it's based on Oehler's designs, and Oehler's got one up there that the last time I saw it before Mike died, at the time I think it was like 45 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
And it had been unlived in for 5 or 6 years, and so it's kind of like, and it's still standing strong. I really believe that this design is a very long-lasting design. Okay. The beauty of cob is that you can shape it into anything, and it is so easy to do. Cob homes can be extremely beautiful, but the amount of time to build a cob wall is far greater than a conventional wall. If you can supply lots of time, you can build a fantastic just as easy to build as cob, but faster. All right. Fascinating little tidbit. There is a house in Cobbville that's built to be something that looks really beautiful, that by the standards of people outside of Cobbville. So like if it was in a conventional neighborhood in a conventional town, it would be considered an acceptable looking house. Wasn't really huge. I think it's a 1-bedroom place with 2 stories, but it is a beautiful place. Then Jocelyn and I visited a cob home in the Seattle area, and it was about the same size, slightly different floor plan, but they paid people to build it. So in the first one in Cobbville, they did not pay people to build it. They built it themselves. And I think if I remember correctly, and then I'm sure Uncle Mud will correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the total materials cost was $10,000 for this 2-story, 1-bedroom, lovely home. And then roughly the same equivalent thing up in the Seattle area, built to code, by the way. The build cost for 1-bedroom home out of Cobb, $300,000. So
Yep.
yeah, the if you're going to include in the labor, suddenly it becomes very expensive. All right. This is a good time to point out that there are cob structures that have a more natural than most roof and foundation, and Southern Cobbville. A good hat and good boots can be rocks and cob for the floor and timber with EPDM for the roof. The structures by Ianto Evans at Cobb Cottage are a great example. So who's going to tell Ianto that I'm plugging him in my book? Of course, Ianto never uses the internet, so he's not going to tell anybody about our Kickstarter. That's unfortunate.
Maybe he can send out letters.
Yeah, I suppose it's possible. The dirty secret of sustainable building. It seems to me that a lot of sustainable or natural homes use a lot of cement. Sometimes there's a huge slab for the foundation. Sometimes there's a basement, and sometimes it's even part of the walls, such as with cordwood or stone buildings. In my travels, I haven't noticed wild cement lying around, just waiting for that special person to come along and whip it up into a new slab floor. To make cement, you need to heat calcium to a very high temperature for a long time. If you were going to build a cement pad for a home and you were going to make your own cement, you might need 100 cords of wood. That is a big slice of forest. And that's a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. Plus, it would probably take you more than a year to convert that calcium and pull all of the ingredients for the cement. and pull together all of the ingredients for the cement. As for the calcium, where did you get that? Do you happen to have a small mountain of seashells at your place? Lastly, it's my feeling, you have a license to have different feelings, that cement tends to take a bit of soul out of a home, whereas a material like cob tends to add a bit of soul to a home. Is that, have you ever sat on a cement bench? So Sean. So yes, you have. And so you get bleacher butt, right? Like, 15, 20 minutes. It's like, and I'm done sitting on this bench.
15, 20 minutes? Like
5 maybe?
30 seconds maybe?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm just about done with that.
So, and then at the same time, have you sat on a cob bench?
I have not, but I've sat on something kind of cob-ish and that.
Okay, all right. So
much different.
A cob bench is pretty much rock solid, just like a cement bench is. A cob floor is pretty much rock solid, just like a cement floor is. And I could probably go 2 or 3 times longer sitting on a cob bench or standing on a cob floor than I can on cement.
Yeah, I agree.
Before bleacher butt sets in, and I've kind of noodled on this a lot as I'm experiencing the buffet, and I have a vast experience, and so in fact, the people that have access to the chat, if you have sat on both. Pick a number that's like how much longer you can go on cob before bleacher butt sets in.
Yeah. And by the way,
I'm going to go with 3. I say it takes 3 times longer until bleacher butt sets in on cob.
I might go with 2, but still. Okay. Mud says he's going to send Ianto a postcard for us. So.
Cool. All right. Let's see. The joy and heartbreak of Earthships. Okay, this is one where, I'm so glad we've written this book and we can get it out there and share it. And here's my full package philosophy. Is that fair to say? Here's where I'm at on all of the things that, we give a kick in the nuts to light bulbs. We give a kick in the nuts to the native plant enthusiasm stuff. We give a kick in the nuts to a bunch of different things. And so here's where, there's so many people that love Earthship so much, and they are about to have their ticket to hate me here. And I'm sorry I do this, but I got to do this. It's like in order to get to the thing that makes a big difference, I have to get past all these blocks, which are like, this is the only way, this is the best, you got to give up all your other things. And so it's like, all right, so here we go. Earthships. When I was a pup, my Earthship book was in tatters from too much love. When Christmas rolled around, everybody's gift from me was a brand new Earthship book. By the time I got land where I could build my first Earthship, my values had become richer. And I had learned a lot more about Earthships that had dimmed my enthusiasm. For those that don't know, an Earthship is a south-facing building with the walls built out of old tires. There's a lot more to it. They are beautiful. And did I mention the old tires? When you hold the book in your hand, your brain is locked on how simple and brilliant this technique is. And using stuff from the waste stream instead of filling dumps with toxic gick sounds great. It probably took me about 10 years of stars until somebody pointed out, so you want to live with the toxic gick in your house. This is where the heartbreak started. Ouch. I wish to thank Michael Reynolds for bringing the Earthship into reality and giving us all this magnificent dream and world-changing stepping stone, I have elected to try to keep all of the best parts of the Earthship design in the Wofati design while mitigating the downsides. Since the new design is so far removed from being an Earthship, and since there are so many downsides of an Earthship, the new design needed a whole new name. I guess this is a long-winded way of saying that I hope Michael Reynolds will forgive me for moving on to the Wofati design. Jack Spirko has a great thing to say about Earthships. And he's like,
just gonna say it.
Yeah, if you're thinking like you want to build an Earthship, get one tire and get your dirt and get a sledgehammer. And then as part of the process, you got to pack the dirt into the tire a particular way. And so Jack says, before you're even halfway done processing that one tire, you will change your mind about Earthships. And I think there's some truth to that. That is some serious hard work. Now,
Yeah,
of course,
I know some people who built an Earthship, and I was talking to them, and they were like, "Oh, I know that a relative of someone who built an Earthship." So they kind of got called in to help out for the day or whatever, and they were like, "Yep, that was a lot of work."
So now they've got like a machine that'll do the packing for you now. I've not seen the pictures. I've heard about it. Because like whenever you bring this up, this thing about packing the tires, then the people that love the Earthship say, well, now there's this machine that'll do it. But it's like I believe that at this, I mean, I have been to so many farms and gardens all over the Pacific Northwest. I gotta say, out of so many places that I visited, I have never been to a site of a completed Earthship. But I have been to, I think, 4 sites where an Earthship had been under construction, and it had been under construction for at least 3 years, and it still wasn't complete.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of these sites where it just goes on and on and on for building. It takes a long time to pack those tires.
Yeah.
So, and then at every Earthship place that I've been to where they're building Earthships, I'm outside, and the whole site just reeks of tires.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the tires off-gassing, and they're off-gassing so much that it stinks on a windy day outside. And so I kind of feel like, hello, spider. I kind of feel like, imagine what it's going to be like when you seal it up. And then there's a lot of stuff out there with information about the downsides of Earthships. The one last thing is that I remember reading in the book that I had about a guy, can't remember his name now. Is it Dennis Hopper? No, his name was Dennis something, and it was an actor. He was a famous actor, an actor I'd heard of, and he had the world's largest Earthship at the time. And apparently they made a movie, and I haven't seen the movie, but I did read about it in the book, and I read about it, and I was so excited about all this. And it's like this actor guy loved his Earthship, but apparently he abandoned it like immediately after the movie was made. Like he was there for the movie, talking about how great it was, and then he like walked out like the next day because being in his Earthship, apparently he had constant headaches.
Oh,
yeah, and so I love my favorite part of the Earthship book that is like, what if I build an Earthship and it turns out that there's a spring in the middle of my Earthship, like water bubbling out of the ground. And so Michael Reynolds says that's a feature. And so you embrace it. And I kind of thought, how cool is that? You got a water feature right in your house. This little bit of kind of like a creek. It's so cool. Oh, Uncle Mud's pointing out it's Dennis Weaver. was the guy. All right. There are lots of Earthships that are complete. I've seen pictures. I just haven't personally visited one. I'd like to. I don't know. I was so in love with the Earthship for so many years. I feel like a traitor by suggesting that they're less than perfect, and so I feel like a bit of a traitor to straw bale. I love straw bale. After Earthships, I started loving on straw bale, and then after being at Cobbville, I love Cobbville. Although I loved Cobb, but at the same time, it was very clear that Cobb is not a great fit for Montana. But all right, moving along. Prevent wildfires by building a home. As mentioned in chapter 25, if you don't thin your forest properly, you could lose all of your trees and possibly your vehicle, home, life, etc. to wildfires. Most of the time when the forest needs thinning, the price that the mill will pay for wood is less than what you might pay to get the wood to the mill. As a result, a lot of folks that need to thin their trees end up burning this wood for no productive purpose and release the carbon into the atmosphere. Such a waste. I want to sequester that carbon and use it to build a house. We're now talking about good forestry management. But I'd like to go 3 steps further to what I call good woodland management. Rather than using forestry practices that are for one person managing 1,000 acres of forest, I prefer techniques for one person developing a symbiotic relationship with 20 acres of woodland. That person lives on the 20 acres, is bonkers about permaculture, and is transforming the land from a conifer forest to what more closely resembles a huge garden loaded with diversity of trees. Maybe 10% of the land will be conifer islands, but the rest of the land will be broadleaf trees. This means that 90% or more of the conifers on the land need to go. And into a home on that very land is the best possible use. To be clear, I am not advocating building a log cabin. It's very hard to stay warm in a log cabin in the winter. The insulation value is low, and there's very little thermal mass. Plus, log cabins require a lot of very specifically sized, fairly large trees. Not a great fit for forest thinnings. The Wofati design uses just a few logs for the frame and then thinnings for the rest, so my design prevents forest fires and I get free building materials at the same time. Have you ever been in a log structure like a log cabin or maybe a restaurant or some other place, and you're looking at the logs and you can see the grain in the logs?
Yes.
Yeah. So what they do with that is they've got a giant machine that you feed in a log and it shaves the log down to a very uniform size that makes it easier to build log cabins. And so the wood that we use in the Wofatis, you don't see any grain because all we did was we just peeled the log. We just peeled the bark off the log. And now we've got the raw log, so you see no grain. So when you're in a log structure, look for the grain. And then that'll be the stuff where it's like they took this wood, possibly even out of their own forest, but they had to run it through this machine that just ate away a bunch of the material, thus weakening the log. Now the log is not as strong as it once was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just there's going to be this energy input into shaping the log that way. This pretty expensive energy input.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that, just to observe what's going on. I've seen a lot of that kind of thing. I've also seen places where They have a conventional wall, but then they've got like these round cuts off of logs that they then shape perfectly into the exact same shapes. They're all uniformly shaped, and then they just glue them onto the walls. And so now it looks like a log cabin,
Right.
on the inside, sort of, but it's not. But hey, at least that way you've got better insulation, because your conventional walls will be, loaded with plastic and insulation.
Yeah.
All right. Any fun comments we should address at this time?
Sergey's hanging out in chat.
Really? Sergey's here? Awesome. Hi, Sergey. Oh, Botinko Films. There he is. He says, hi, Paul. Spiffy. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to the next section, from junk to genius, with one simple design change. 80% of my design stands on the rather brilliant shoulders of the late Mike Oehler. In the fall of 1970, Mike lived in a crappy shack and struggled to stay warm. He decided that the following spring he would build a better place to live. He spent the winter drawing all sorts of designs to calculate heat efficiency. He also wanted to keep his materials costs low. He came up with a design that was unlike anything he had ever seen anywhere else. Mike's design eliminates many of the complexities of conventional construction. Further, if you live on wooded land, most of the required materials consist of what you cut from your land when doing sustainable forestry thinning. No importing straw bales or dump truckloads of sand. In fact, everything you import could fit into one pickup load. Some doors, some glass, some plumbing and electrical stuff, all of which you would bring in for any type of house. Now, I can see Mud is probably typing furiously right now to say, we made that door. We did not import that door. We made it ourselves. So there's a rather massive but we intentionally made it way too big and way too thick, way too tall, way too wide, way too heavy. And it's positioned in such a way that it opens and closes so easily, and it's held closed with magnets. We don't currently have a latch on the door. We've had some conversations about, do we need a latch on the door? Because it's so heavy. I mean, it takes a lot to get it to open. Yeah. And so the door isn't just going to pop open on its own. It doesn't move that easily on its own. Okay. All right. Let's see. Mike's. Let's see. I'm not sure where I was. I should mark these as I go along. Mike's design. Further, if you live on wooded land, mostly required materials consist of what you cut from your land when doing sustainable forestry thinning. Okay, I already read that part. All right.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, Mike's design is a pole structure with a green roof. This usually means a structure surrounded by a waterproof membrane and then covered with dirt. A green roof is usually more expensive than a conventional roof, but Mike found that if you can follow one simple design principle, you can dramatically cut the costs of the whole structure. The one simple design principle is this: every drop of rain must have a complete downhill soil path and must never encounter the edge of a roof. In order to illustrate this principle, we're going to try and show the water flow for various designs. The shading will be darker where there's more water in the soil. With a conventional home, if you put a little wraparound ditch on the uphill side, water is managed like so. All right. So, of course, the pod people won't be able to see the image. I don't know if, Sean, you're able to share this image with people. I think you tried to get your image showing stuff set up before we started today's.
Yeah, it didn't seem particularly promising.
So, all right. So what we've got here is your regular salt box shaped house, and there's a ditch on the uphill side. So when the water comes down, it's carried around. But of course, one of the things is that the house is higher up than the ground. I mean, I don't know how many times I see houses where it's like the house sits lower, like the floor inside the house is lower than the surrounding ground. And it's kind of like, what are you thinking is going to happen there? You know, aren't you going to get a flooded basement or even flooded house? You're going to get water in your house. All right. So it's important that outside the house, that any water that happens to be there is going to be wanting to go away from the house. In his book, Mike Oehler describes a first thought house, the design people generally think of when they think of a house with a green roof. I call it a don't do this house. Now, of course, I'm going to point out that the name of Mike's book is called the $50 and Up Underground House Book. And so usually what they do is it's a shed roof style thing, and the open part is facing downhill. So you can get this view, this magnificent view. And then the water that lands on the roof goes to the back of the house, which is the uphill side. And then it accumulates behind the house, which is why most, like 90% of underground houses are abandoned, is because they have all these water and drainage problems. They've got water inside the house. So there's a picture of this thing he calls the first thought house, where it's facing downhill and the water piles up behind it. And I call it the don't do this house. People tend to think that of the second design more than the first, where basically the soil is filled in. But where does all of the extra dirt come from? Are you also digging a big hole somewhere nearby? Let's drop that design and focus on the first one. This might be a good time to include a reminder that the Wofati design is intended for sloped land. Otherwise, there's a lot of dirt that needs moving. With rain, and we're showing the water hitting the roof, running to the back, the water coming down the hill and also hitting the back. And so you've got all this water concentrating behind the house. And and then of course it's got, Tracy's drawn in a little flood inside the house.
Yeah, that's right.
This is where the people with this terrible design start doing their pseudo engineering. The first thought is to put a French drain on the uphill side. But a French drain is designed to deal with the water table getting too high, not with too much water coming from above. So while that might help a little, it really doesn't work. A wraparound ditch around the back might help a little, but most of the water is already below the soil level and yet still above the floor level inside the house. The bottom line is that people that use this design end up with something that smells like a musty basement and is so riddled with water problems that thousands of these homes are abandoned. I could go on about this, but Mike's book does a much better job of bashing this design. Let's fix the primary problem with the don't do this house design. This is where Mike is just absolutely brilliant. And so here's the image where it's got the don't do this design, and it's facing, the windows are facing downhill, and we just flip the whole thing around so the windows are facing uphill. Now all of the water that lands on the roof now runs down the hill. When it gets to the back of the roof, off the back of the slope, it just continues right on down the hill. Now, there's a sucky aspect to this design, and that is that everything you're looking at uphill is like a hill. It's a bunch of, hill just right there. It's like, but I wanted this awesome view. Well, we have a solution for that. That's coming soon. That was easy. I simply pointed it uphill instead of downhill. Now the wraparound ditch gives us all of the perks that we get in a conventional home, and everything that lands on the roof goes downhill to where it isn't bothering me. The important thing to note is that I have now fixed all of the water problems. Sound effect for a cheering crowd goes here. And when I say that I did it, I really mean Mike Oehler did it. Sound effect for a cheering crowd goes here also. Great design, no water in my house, but all I've got to look at is the back of a hill instead of my beautiful downhill view. Wofati suck. Well, now I'm going to poke a big hole in the downhill side so that I can get all of that amazing view. Here is an attempt at conveying in 2 dimensions the 3-dimensional complexity of a gable roof on the downhill side. All right, so now we've got a couple of images that Tracy has put a lot of time into. And so basically we've got a gable roof on the downhill side. So the water that lands anywhere on the structure is going to move to the left and the right of the structure, to the sides, and then down the hill, as opposed to either running to the back of the structure or running down the hill in such a way that we don't have any view. So we've attached the gable roof to the shed roof, and this is our most basic Wofati design. All right. Oh, look at those beautiful images. Don't you guys wish you owned this book now? Water that reaches the house from the uphill side is diverted by the ditch that is below floor level. Any rain that falls on the roof will drain to the downhill side. Now we've got light coming into the building from both the uphill and the downhill side. And we won't wake up to find our mattress floating in a flooded bedroom like we're in some sort of cartoon. All right. Please tell me that you saw that cartoon. You know,
the mattress in the cartoon. I'm the one who wrote that into the text. That was my line.
Was it? I thought I wrote that. Because I think about Bugs Bunny floating around on his little mattress. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I added that into the...
Okay. The next section is called A Freaky Cheap Home That Doesn't Look Freaky Cheap. There are a lot of manufacturers out there who proudly proclaim that their houses are much cheaper than the average. It turns out that with manufactured homes, you usually get what you pay for. The house looks cheaper than the average, not the kind of place I would like to live in. My goal with the design of the Wofati is to provide a more luxuriant space at half the cost of a conventional home. Oh yeah, when I said earlier that Mike Oehler was trying to reduce materials cost with his design, I kind of forgot to mention Mike's original home only cost him $50 to build. Later, Mike added on to that home to make it a little bigger and a little nicer. The cost of the addition was $500. Now, I don't think in the book we mentioned that Mike also has the $15 house.
No, we don't mention that.
Yeah, and I got a video of the $15 house. And so the total cost to build it was $15. And so, I mean, and a lot of people are kind of like, I'm never going to. What I'm asking you to do is wrap your head around it. And it's like, if this guy could build this for $15, what do you think you could do with $500? You could probably build a pretty nice house for $500. You could probably build a magnificent house. In fact, there's a lot of Oehler houses that have been built. The total materials cost for a 4-bedroom home was like $8,000. And so I just kind of feel like this is very low cost. But of course, now we're kind of back to where we were with Cobb, where it's like, okay, the materials cost is low, but what about the labor costs? And of course, these houses are being built very quickly because there's no foundation. And then the roof is this design of the roof ends up going together pretty quick, and it's like so much cheaper than it's cheaper and faster to build than conventional. Okay.
And faster to build, I think, even if you're scavenging materials.
Right.
Although that sometimes can. And on that topic, actually.
Yeah, to be fair, Mike used a lot of scavenged materials. And if every person on the planet went this route, then there would be a limited amount of materials to scavenge. So the cost would be a little higher for things like new windows and plumbing parts. Still, even in that case, we're talking about the ability to build a house for only a few weeks worth of wages. Yes, weeks, not years. To illustrate how this might be possible, let's do a ground-up comparison between a Wofati and a conventional home. The first part of building a conventional home is the foundation. The foundation usually rings in at around 1/3 of the total cost of a home. A Wofati is a type of pole structure, so it requires no foundation. There's roughly 1/3 of the price gone. Next, there's the exterior walls of the structure. Building a conventional home involves bringing in a lot of materials: framing, lumber, nails, insulation, vapor barrier, plywood, drywall, etc. These materials have a cost to them. In a Wofati, the shell is made of trees cut from the land, a thin waterproof membrane, some dirt, and some wood duff. Materials cost maybe a couple $100 for the membrane. Topping off the structure is the roof. Like the foundation, the roof is also roughly 1/3 of the cost of a conventional home. Again, we're looking at lots of imported, read costly, materials. And if you wish to do a standard green roof, the cost of the roof increases by a factor of 10. All right, so now I'm just going to pause for a second. I'm marking where I was. If you want a green roof on a conventional house, it costs 10 times more than a conventional roof, and it has to do with like the drainage. You know, you got to be able to hold the soil up there while still providing drainage.
Yeah,
and it's like it is a sophisticated thing. I mean, it's cool, it's amazing, but suddenly there's a lot more materials involved. There's a lot more work involved. Yeah. The overall house, and it ends up being very expensive to do a green roof. But Mike's design and the design of the Wofati are such that if you're willing to sacrifice skylights and the need for gutters, the cost of your roof will be less than 1/10 that of a conventional roof. For materials, we're still looking at trees cut from the land, a thin waterproof membrane, some dirt, and some wood duff. Again, just the cost of the membrane. Of course, not everyone wants to build their own house. Fair enough. But then you're probably going to have to pay somebody to build it for you. My hope is that the comparison between a Wofati and a conventional home painted a picture that suggests not only reduced materials cost, but reduced labor costs too. For example, drilling a few post holes is going to require much less labor than pouring a concrete slab, or even worse, a damp, smelly basement. Most of the labor for a Wofati is going to come from log prep, harvesting trees, removing the bark, and bringing them to the building site. This can be a long process, but I think that there are ways that we can speed this process up significantly. Once the logs are prepped and ready, there is labor involved in erecting the structure, and then it's mostly some time with an excavator for assembling the envelope. Quick note, if you harvest your trees in the early spring, like right about now, the bark practically falls off.
Right.
Okay. It sounds like we are now well on our way to reducing costs. My hope is that as we continue to experiment with building these structures, we can find ways to optimize the process such that the labor to build a Wofati is far less than a conventional home. And since the materials cost is extremely low, a Wofati would be a beautiful, freaky cheap place to live. And if that isn't enough, let's talk about how the structure may not need any heat or air conditioning. So the next section is called using. Oh, do we have any? I mean, I can see lots of stuff scrolling by in the.
Yeah, one of the comments said, you said 1/3 for the foundation, 1/3 for the walls, and 1/3 for the roof. What about all the other things in a house? And I think it's kind of like, okay, it's not exactly a third of each. Certainly, there's going to be cost for plumbing. There's going to be cost for electrical, things like that.
Right.
But just as a general guideline,
I'm talking about the shell. I'm talking about yeah. So there's a cost for a kitchen sink, and so I'm not including that.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be the cost for your breaker box and all your wires for electricity. I'm not including.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a significant cost to add that in.
And then the I'm actually surprised we're about an hour and a half in until this question got asked. I thought we'd get asked in the first 5 minutes. Paul, what about permits?
Yeah, what about them? Okay, so I don't know. I think we've kind of covered this in a few podcasts in the past, but I think that he's in California. He's in Southern California. And where he's building and doing all of his gray water stuff, it's like completely against the law.
Right.
And so at least it was until, and so what he did is he avoided regulators. He did his experiments. He did his work. He proved that he was right about gray water. And then when the time came, then he got in touch with legislators. And then the legislators asked him to write the new legislative code for Southern California for gray water systems.
Right.
So the moral of the story is that in order to build a better world, we have to break the law. And there are some places where the law is going to be cool with that, and there are some places where the law isn't. And so I specifically myself bought property where it is legal. I can build weird things if I want,
right?
And do these experiments. But yeah, there's a lot of places, and it's kind of like, in order to be able to. Then in fact, I'm not even sure if we get to the story in here. Do you know if we do, or we tell the story about the people that had the what was it? I think it was a 4-bedroom Oehler structure.
No, we don't cover that in the book.
Okay, so I know I've shared this story more than 100 times, but Mike Oehler talks about a guy who built an Oehler structure, and he's out working in his garden one day, and this is somewhere in Europe, and the Department of Making You Sad approaches the front gate and says, we heard that you have a house on this property. It's 2 acres, not really big property. He says, we heard you have a house here, and we have no record of you asking for a permit to build the house, and you certainly haven't paid any taxes or anything like that. So the guy says, well, come on onto the property. If you can, I'm just doing some gardening today, but if you can find a house, I guess I have to pay taxes on it. So apparently they didn't find it. Which
and it was a pretty small property too, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I kind of think, surely there's going to be a trail that goes up to the front door. I mean, the design is such that if you plant lots of shrubs and stuff, it would become pretty invisible. Even though you would still have tons of light coming in, you would be standing around it, and there'd be shrubs in the way. You wouldn't see it there. But I can't help but think that there's going to be a trail that goes up to a door that goes inside.
Yeah.
But still, the story is wonderful if you just kind of look past that thing about the trail. But I do have a video on YouTube that is of Mike Oehler's $50 house. And I think I got 2 different views. One is like I think I'm about 25 feet away from the front door. And I video scanning everything, and you can't see it. And then Jocelyn comes out the front door and waves and goes away. And then Mike comes out the front door and waves and goes away. And it's like the whole house just disappears. It's just gone. You can't see it. And then I got a video of me walking along a trail that basically walks, across the building. And I have to stop and point the camera at a window. And there's the window. Do you see it? Look carefully. There's the window. and you walk right by on this trail, and you don't see the building.
Right.
So I think it is possible to do, and to make a building that, and to me, what I want to do is something like, I've built this magnificent garden, and it's as if I had a big flat patch, and I built this huge magnificent garden, and then I just lifted up a big slice that's like 20 feet wide, and I slipped in a house and then laid the garden back on top of the house. To me, this is an aesthetic. This is a type of art.
Yeah.
And this is the art of nature. And even more than that, this is the art of a gardener romancing nature. And it's like, this is integrated in the whole house. So this is this beauty of a gardener's beauty, is what I want for these Wofatis.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like, even if it was more expensive, I kind of feel like this beauty that you get out of it is the best. It's vastly superior. But okay, yeah, they can be extremely invisible. I'm surprised that there's not 10,000 Wofatis built now by the prepper community. You know, it's like it's a form of defense. You know, they can't even find my house, kind of a thing. Not to mention the fact that there's no smoke trace in the wintertime, because you don't burn any wood in order to heat it. All right. Any other comments from the chat thing there?
No, I think let's keep moving.
All right. Using the heat from summer to heat your home during the winter. The shell of Oehler's structure has a waterproof membrane around it. In his book, he talks about using polyethylene, a clear or black plastic sheeting, for the membrane. Later, he started using EPDM, pond lime, which is thicker and less prone to having holes poked in it, but also more expensive. We hope that someday we'll figure out a way of doing this with purely natural materials, like clay. This membrane keeps any moisture from coming through the soil and into the house. That said, if there's a heavy rain or melting snow, the dirt that is just on the other side of the membrane is often wet. Remember how straw doesn't have much insulative power, and yet a straw bale wall is considered to be far more insulative than a conventional wall. That's because it's so thick. The R value per inch of a typical straw bale wall is rated between 0.94 and 2.68. For comparison, the R value per inch of fiberglass bats is 3.1 to 4.3. But they are often much thinner. Looking at our green roof, the R value per inch for dirt is roughly 0.05 when wet and 0.33 when dry. 6 times more insulative when dry. After I stumbled upon Mike Oehler's stuff, I found a copy of John Haight's book called Passive Annual Heat Storage. In that book, John appears to extend Mike's ideas to include a cheap means to completely eliminate the need to heat the structure. On top of dry dirt being 6 times more insulative than wet dirt, dry dirt also has the ability to retain heat for a really long time. Haight's book goes into a lot of mathematical detail on this, and he concludes that if you have 20 feet of dry dirt, you can carry the heat of summer all through the cold winter. Thermal inertia. Well, I don't want to have a house that is 20 feet deep, and Haight doesn't suggest that. Instead, wrap this much dry dirt around more than half of the house. He has done this more than once, and the result is a home that requires no heat. Haight's initial experiments were with homes in Montana, a great place to test heating strategies. Incorporating Haight's research into the Wofati design, now you have a layer of structure, R2.5 to R5, membrane on the structure, about 8 inches of dry dirt, R2.64, about 4 inches, of wood duff, R5, another layer of membrane, and then 20 inches of wet dirt. That works at about R1. This cross-section of the roof layers. And so Tracy's made a lovely drawing of these different layers that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Lastly, John Haight's book is called Passive Annual Heat Storage. But what the title leaves out is that this design also brings a good deal of cooling in the summer. I think the phrase annualized thermal inertia is more accurate. The strict definition of Wofati. The W, so here's the acronym. We're going to spell out the acronym. W is for woodland. O is for Oehler inspired, because Mike Oehler spells his name Oehler. F is for freaky cheap. And then the ATI is the annualized thermal inertia. But even though it's an acronym, I prefer Wofati all lowercase, the joys of making stuff up, because it's my word. Since I made up the word, I get to define what it means. If anyone's going to call their structure Wofati, I hereby require it to meet the following criteria. 1, every drop of rain has a complete downhill soil path and never encounters a roof edge. 2, there are 2 layers of membrane, the lower layer, which hugs the structure, and the upper layer, which defines the thermal mass that surrounds the structure. 3, the uphill side has an open trench to move water around the structure. 4, the uphill side has a roof that extends at least 5 feet beyond the exterior wall. 5, there are at least 8 inches of dirt between the 2 layers of membrane. There are at least 16 inches of dirt on the top layer of membrane. 6, the inner pole structure is made of logs. 7, no treated wood is used in any of the structure. Further, if anyone's going to call their structure a Wofati house, I hereby require it to meet the following additional criteria. A, at least 35% of the uphill wall is glass or what's happening?
I don't know. I'm back.
Okay.
I dropped
gone
somehow.
for a moment? I saw it disappeared. Hey, are we still on? It says we're still going. Can the people in the chat type something to say that we're still going? I'm guessing it's still recording. It did this whole thing like somebody hit the reset button.
That's not good.
Um,
Someone says, does 3 out of 5 count? No, you have to do them all. Otherwise, it's not a Wofati.
Oh, okay. I want to see the people in the chat type stuff so I can see that, that they can still hear.
Yeah, they're back.
Oh, we see you. You're on now. Okay, so everything's all right. All right.
So
all right.
Maybe you dropped, not me. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Okay. A modification for a year-round freezer. One of the potential additional applications of a Wofati design is a Wofati freezer. We've already talked about using the heat from summer to heat your home during the winter. This is basically the same idea, except backwards. A Wofati freezer uses the cold from winter to keep things frozen throughout the summer. While a Wofati house is suitable for hot or cold climates, a Wofati freezer will include a pluggable vent tube that runs through the core of the thermal mass that are below 10 degrees Fahrenheit and let the heat escape to the outside air. On days above 10 degrees, the tubes are plugged to reduce the amount of heat transferring into the mass in order to keep the mass cold. It helps to have a big mass. The upper layer of membrane should cover at least 5 times as much square footage as the available square footage in the structure. With this in place, it should be possible to store food year-round with zero ongoing energy inputs.
Oh, I think that's such a great idea.
All right. Here in Montana, when you get 20 feet down, the average soil temperature is 45 degrees. If you go to a spot that has a north-facing slope, so it gets less sun than a flat slope, a flat patch, or a south-facing slope, which will get more sun. A north-facing slope has less sun. It's even colder.
Right.
And so then if you were to go down, what?
What did you say the temperature was?
45 degrees Fahrenheit. So
Okay.
I forget that you're a Canadian.
Yeah, I had to pull up the Google here to turn that
Okay.
into. Yeah. So I think ours here is about 40 to 43
Okay.
when you get
All right.
down deep enough. So pretty close.
Okay. So now it's 45 degrees on flat land. And if you've got north-facing slope, it might be less than 40 degrees. So if you just built a root cellar on a north-facing slope, chances are that it's probably going to stick fairly close to, let's say, 39 degrees. Now, if we shape the land around it to basically encourage a frost pocket, so any cold air that might come down the slope gets concentrated into this spot, we might have an average temperature that's still about 3 or 4 degrees colder than that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so now let's say we're talking about 35 degrees. Well, freezing's at 32, so we're just a pinch above freezing.
Yeah.
So now we do the whole Wofati thing in such a way, and we eliminate all the windows. Because if this is going to be a year-round freezer, we don't need windows.
Nope.
The surrounding mass has a big tube through it that has an uphill slope to it. So when you pull the plugs, then all of the heat that's trapped in there gets extracted. And I'm assuming you're going to pull the plugs on a cold day. Like let's say it's 0 outside. You pull the plugs, the heat goes out, the 0 degrees goes in, and so basically you could think of it as charging the mass with this cold.
Yeah.
And so we just need a little bit, because we're only trying to go from like 35 down to 32. So we're not covering a big gap here.
Depends what you're trying to get to. I know for like commercial kitchens, at least up here, it's about 0 Fahrenheit is the temperature that the freezers are required to be. So it's minus 18 Celsius.
Okay.
I don't know all of the reasons for why that is, but I know here it gets bloody cold enough. I'm sure you could charge a mass to minus 18 if you really wanted to.
So, all right, the key is that this is nothing more than an idea. And there have been so many times that we've been trying to start the build, and then shit happens, and we got to go deal with the shit. So, but at the same time, it's like I don't think we're going to build one this year. We've got far too many other projects, we're in the middle of. But I don't know. I love the idea of this idea. It needs to be a double chambered thing. The first chamber would be slightly warmer, and the further back chamber would be colder.
Yeah.
And so, but I would kind of think that you would think, oh, that first chamber could be a refrigerator, and it's like, yeah. And then the second chamber would be the freezer. But I love the idea of doing this experiment. All of these other things, but my voice is giving out. I don't think I can. We might have to do this in 2 parts.
I think we might have to.
But
maybe I should have read the stuff earlier.
But that's it. That's the end of the chapter. We made it through the whole chapter. Has anybody got any? When you were reading all the stuff, were there any good comments or questions or anything?
Yeah, let's do a few questions. I remember somebody was asking, and I know you and I have talked about this a few times, and we did address it somewhat in this chapter. It was a question of like, okay, where can you build a Wofati and where can't you build a Wofati? And so someone was like, can you build one in a swamp? And I was kind of like, I imagine your logs are probably going to rot. That's my theory.
I think if you're going to build in a swamp, first of all, that swamp is going to be probably really flat. And so there you go. No Wofati there. But yeah, this is, in fact, with Oehler's structure, he says that the Oehler structure is fireproof. So like if there's a wildfire in the area, no problem. Earthquake proof. So like there's a long list of natural disasters that it's totally an awesome defense against. The only thing its Achilles heel is flooding. It does not do well with flooding. And so I wouldn't, and while Oehler's got designs for building on flat land, I don't think I would want to build a Wofati on a flat land. In fact, where Allerton Abbey is, it's a pretty gentle slope.
Yeah.
And one of the lessons learned there was that was too gentle of a slope. In order to complete the structure, we're having to dig a pond over there and take the guts of the pond to put it on the roof of the Wofati. And it's like, that's not an efficient thing. And so needs more slope than that.
To be efficient. Yeah. Otherwise, you're starting to put a lot of energy into assembling it and getting the materials.
Now for Mike, he's like totally cool with it being underground, and I'm not. Right. And so with Mike's designs for flat, then it's very underground.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like if you're going to build it not underground, so the floor has to be higher than the surrounding ground.
Yeah.
Then it's kind of like, all right, you build it there. Now you're going to put on your thicker than roof. Where are you getting that thicker than roof material from?
Yeah, if you're in a flat spot, the only way you can get it is digging a huge pond.
Right.
And so, if you're going to dig a huge pond anyways, then it's maybe not horrible, but it is still a lot of extra work to drive back and forth.
Moving the material there
is going to take a ton of time.
That's the thing that's just killing us.
Somebody asks what your flatland recommendation is, and keeping in mind here, I live in flatland. Paul's recommendation is move.
Yeah, sell.
So, sorry, that's not more helpful. Somebody else says the soil side, does it face north or south? I think the point, the way I understand it at least, is this structure is not set up to be passive solar. You can do passive solar with it, but the design itself is set up to theoretically work regardless of which direction you point it in, so long as the direction you point it in is up and downhill.
Yeah, I think that the design is definitely aligned with the hill, and not with passive solar. Now, so with Allerton Abbey, I was very hands off during the build. And I would go up like once a week to check on things, and because I was doing so many other things at the same time. But I went up one day and they were mapping out where it's all going to go, and I saw it and I said, well, wait, this isn't aligned with the slope that's here. And then the response was, no, we wanted to get the passive solar gain, and so we're aligning the glass towards the sun. And I said, actually, for Allerton Abbey, it's important to me, and that's why I picked this spot, is that the slope goes east-west. And so it'll be the worst possible passive solar. I want to eliminate passive solar from this build, because I want to prove how well the annualized thermal inertia works without being influenced by passive. Because otherwise what's going to happen is we're going to get it all going, and people are going to be like, oh, they say that it's the annualized thermal inertia, but look, it's all passive solar. That's all it is. Yeah. And so, it's like I need at least one of these where we can be able to measure this, to be able to see how well the annualized thermal inertia works with this design without being influenced by passive solar. Now, all that said, passive solar has one really big problem: clouds and winter. And so it's possible that you can have this magnificent passive solar home, and then the sun comes out and everybody inside is cooking. It's like a big solar oven. Yeah. And it's like, and it's possible to even have the temperature exceed 130 degrees. So, if you've got an animal inside you got your cat inside your house, you might come home and find the cat dead because it just got too hot. And then at night, then it gets way too cold. All that glass lets all that heat back out. So, however, I kind of feel like if you had plenty of hillside, you might find a north-facing slope and then build on the north-facing slope. So that way most of your glass is facing south. And then all those problems disappear, because then the heat comes in and then heats your mass inside. And then it evens temperature out dramatically. It gets far more even. And so I think that Wofati plus passive solar is going to be a match made in heaven. But I think that the annualized thermal inertia of the Wofati is going to be the real champion. And then the passive solar added on top of that is a nicety. I think that's where we're going to go. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Okay. All right.
One more question from chat.
Okay.
What about mudslides? How far up the hill? Now, of course, we don't really have hills here. And we certainly don't have mudslides here.
Oh, I think you just froze up again.
Oh, come on. Really? My understanding is that it might be your connection.
Yeah, if you've got a steep enough slope, that could be an issue. But then really, isn't it kind of going to have something to do with like what you've got growing up there? I mean,
yeah, I keep thinking that's not actually about the house design. That's about how are you taking care of the rest of your land, and you know, how are the people above you taking care of their land?
And then if you've got any kind of style of house, I mean, aren't they all going to be equally susceptible to mudslide issues?
I would imagine. Well, I would postulate, without doing math, that the Wofati might fare better than some of the other ones, but it's still going to be a really sad day. So, you know, set up your land in a way that doesn't cause mudslides.
Yeah. Write that down so you don't forget. Okay. Jocelyn says that she can hear you, Sean, but not me, Paul.
Okay, so I thought maybe it was
I think it's about time to wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
Did we document here? There it is. And so we're going to talk about the updates and the lessons learned. I wanted to put out a mention about the biological reverse Kickstarter, especially the boot focus stuff. And so, in fact, maybe there could be a biological reverse Kickstarter to be like for a freezer Wofati.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. And then for some of the biological reverse Kickstarter, I think somebody's throwing in a knitted hat. Like they're going to hand knit a hat. So like right now, I know that Robbie is posting like 5 or 6 pictures a day, every day. And then if he does a picture a day, every day for 90 days, which I think he's on like day 65 or something like that, then the biological reverse Kickstarter pays him, I think it's like $500. Maybe it's more than that.
It's not bad.
Yeah. And so I kind of think that if more people could go and put more goodies behind the biological reverse Kickstarter, then that would really encourage pictures and video and certain projects to be done and things like that. And more than just like, because everybody just wants me to do all the things. And it's kind of like, no, we're trying to build community here and then have a whole bunch of people building all the things. And so I think that's really the path to go. And so how do we find ways to get that off the ground? We have money from one pod person, so somebody who listens to the podcast, to pay somebody to professionally build a berm shed. But we reached out to 5 different timber framers, and they are all too busy right now. So, and I got to add a caveat to that, in that yesterday evening I got a phone call from somebody who says he knows somebody who might be available, and they're trying to work that out, and we'll see. But that sounds like quite the stretch if that's going to happen. But if anybody knows of somebody that has actual professional paid experience for timber framing, even roundwood timber framing would be even better, then it's kind of like, and we've done that. We've taught this stuff here before. But what we want to do is to get, like, let's move these projects forward. And so we'll do what we normally do parallel to this other person building, and we get another example. And so if anybody knows of somebody, please put them in touch with us.
Yeah.
I'm ready to wrap. My voice, I'm just... All right. Thank you so much to everybody who came in and put in stuff in the chat. Oh, man. That was just exciting to see all of the comments whizzing by.
Yeah, that's fun.
That is so cool. We'll do this again. We send our Patreon peeps the advance notice on when we're going to do this, and we'll finish this up. Please support our Kickstarter. If you already have, consider bumping it up a little bit, maybe. It's in the Kickstarter. It's so I'm so relieved that we're funded, and now I'm excited to see how far it will go. This is such a fun time. Thank you, everybody. Anything else to add, Sean?
No, thanks everyone.
If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com, where we talk about natural building, homesteading, and permaculture all the time.